Hey folks, this is Ben Yessel. How's it going? Um, I'm at my parents' cabin here for the week on vacation, and I might make some videos on vacation. Maybe not. It all depends on how this week goes, and just so that you guys are aware of this kind of one side of this whole deal. There's a whole bunch of cousins, or I should say, nieces and nephews that are running around, little kids. And so, in terms of making anything musical, that might happen and might not. And it's completely up to chance whether or not I can actually make a video without any little kids crying or shouting or whatever. It's how it is. And then in my regular life, it's probably even easier to make a music video there, but I'm dealing with interruptions all the time. And it is how I keep trying to make those kinds of videos. But at any rate, I definitely have some thoughts in my mind here. And vacation is going well, by the way. Um, just saw Overboard again. I bought Overboard for my parents and to watch at our cabin here. And also was trying to work on some more music um, over the next week or so. And, watching some Ramsey Dewey. He's a member of my church that he trains actually professional fighters, MMA fighters over in Shanghai, China. So I'm getting the story of, and Overboard's a great movie. Sometimes I think many of us are longing for truly great movies to watch in the, when we want to relax. And I remember what a truly great movie was, especially as a little boy and as a teenager in the 80s and 90s. We had so many great movies. We were saturated with great movies. And these days, we don't. We don't have very many great movies. I don't know why. I have ideas, I have thoughts. There are a gazillion YouTube videos about this very subject. And so all we can do sometimes is just watch the older ones and just hope we get some better ones. So, but Overboard has a romantic storyline, and I love it. I love it, quite a bit. And I like even more how Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn are such great people. These are people, both Goldie and Kurt are people that you would want to know in real life, that have a lot of great qualities about themselves, and yeah, and um, just you feel certain feelings when you're watching Ramsey Dewey's stuff a lot of times too, especially this one video where he was walking along a beach in China, had his daughter with him. He's talking about his missionary experiences in Argentina, and he's talking about getting wisdom. And a lot of times he's talking about martial arts, but this one was a bit more spiritual in nature, and And, in my videos, um, you know, I've made, I don't know how many by this point. I plan on making thousands more in my life, but, um, I'm sure they run the gamut. I know I've been, I know I've been honest with you guys about my life. I know I've spoken from the heart, and um, I know that I'm not using a lot of things that would make my videos more popular, and I know that you know it is what it is, and I often find that it's late hours that I make a YouTube video or two, three, and that's just the way it is sometimes. I mean, and it's sometimes I just don't have the energy to make an awesomer, nicer video. But despite all that, it just, you know, I felt very good about my content on YouTube because of how sincere I've been. This is a very sincere channel. If I want to do a comedy channel, I'll do a comedy channel, but this is my real self, talking about my real thoughts about things. Sometimes it might seem repetitive. In some respects, sometimes it might seem like some other things, but if you watch all these videos on my channel, you watch enough of them, and there's hours and hours and hours of content, you should know what kind of person I am. That's the whole idea. And you might learn a few things, maybe. So whether or not I have only 100 subscribers, or I get to 1,000, or I get to 10,000, or I get to 100,000, or 1,000,000, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is whoever's watching my stuff, whatever benefit you get from it. If it's one person, it's up to a gazillion, I don't know. And I take that from Ramsey Dewey directly. And another gentleman that encouraged me to start this channel, Marcus McAllister. But whether it's Ramsey Dewey or Marcus McAllister, I've had those people that have encouraged me to do stuff on YouTube. And I'll continue to do stuff on YouTube, regardless of all the crud that's been thrown at my way. Regardless of, I've mentioned my extreme distaste at some of these things that have been thrown my direction on YouTube. It's not going to deter me. It's not going to cause me to quit making videos. The only thing that's going to cause me to quit making videos is YouTube themselves. That's it. Because there's no other entity that can shut down my channel except for them. Anyway, and that's not going to happen. Unless, again, if they do that, I'll start all over again somewhere else. Anyway, so, with regard to music composition, it's a funny thing. It really is. There's a lot of things that you don't learn at all in college music programs that have a great deal to do with writing music. What are some of these things that you just don't learn? You just experience, and then you write. Well, some melodies are especially emotional in nature. we might think that they sound romantic, or they sound sad, or they sound um, bittersweet, or they sound thoughtful or reflective, or you're longing for something, or you desire something, or strongly, deeply. Not something transitory or smaller, but something more of a spiritual or emotional, deeper emotional kind of thing, experience, or whatever it is. Some melodies reflect these emotions. A lot of times folks wonder, how do you write that stuff? How do you create those emotions? Well, the first thing that you have to do is actually to experience those emotions. You have to know what those emotions feel like, vividly, strongly, in its full power, before you can take everything you know about music and translate it into how you're feeling. The feeling always comes first. The music comes later. If it's the other way around, then it definitely is music that, in my opinion, is coming from God. Because that makes sense, right? So, we could talk about major 7 and 9 chords all day, or minor 7 and 9 chords, especially major 7 and 9 chords in some respects. Especially that, up to the ninth. Because beyond the ninth, it can seem a little bit over rich, I guess you could say, in triadic harmony. If we're talking about extended tertial harmony, but the ninth, seventh, and ninth chords do provide more color than the simple triad. Well, major triad has its place, of course, and you can talk about some degree of chromaticism, even if it's slight, and how it affects the mood of the piece. And you can talk about things like tempo and dynamics, things that very much influence the melody. And as I mentioned, these are different elements. You should already be making these connections in your own mind, what I'm referring to regarding the effects of these different elements of music. And if you aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, then I would love to be able to teach you. But this is in-depth stuff. But part of all this has to do with listening to music that reflects these emotions that you experience. It's interesting to me how when you have all these different people in the world when you meet, and whether they're old or young or whatever, and my music students so far in my life have run the gamut from all these different personalities, tons of different personalities, to tons of different tastes in music. And I've had not too many people that have wanted to study music composition, but I've had some. I've had several at least, which I think I've been pretty lucky, to teach who I've been able to teach. And I really do owe a certain horn teacher big time for how much she's helped me find these students. I just owe her so much, I feel. But again, it begins with the feeling. We have to suffer. Or we have to long for something deeply for years to really have that emotional fuel. Once you tap into that again, it's there to provide the emotional fuel for music that you want to write that's more emotional. If you haven't experienced those strong emotions, which are sometimes so sublime but often very bitter, then there's no guarantee that you can write that kind of music. You can study every element of music in depth. You can write music that you feel is a constructive, or the elements are arranged in such a way that the piece is going to have a certain mood to it, and you can do that, and a lot of composers do that. But it will never be. It just won't have that certain carrying capacity. One of the main critiques of Maurice Ravel's music, by the way, is despite its harmonic sophistication, and he's combining that with classical form, it's seen as emotionally detached so many times. And Ravel preferred it that way for his own reasons. Perhaps Ravel was never fully comfortable expressing certain emotions in music. Perhaps he found it distasteful to express particularly strong emotions in music. But we still love his music. It's very distinct. He's different than anybody else. And my hat's off to Ravel. It's always been that way. But I wouldn't, but if he wrote something especially emotional, he probably already has to some extent or another, but some of these thoughts are coming from another lady that I'm friends with, her son, who's a musician. I think we could say she's been a professional musician on some level. And she's taught piano lessons to her kids as well. So I tend to take her pretty seriously when she's talking about Ravel. Plus she has Swiss ancestry. French and German Swiss ancestry. Both. Swabian and stuff. Anyway. So we have to experience these emotions to have that emotional fuel to write music that has that kind of power. And these emotions and experiences tend to occur when someone is in their teens, generally speaking, and older. If you write something that is from experiences that you've had when you're a boy or girl, before the age of 13 or 14 or so, roughly, before puberty, then you're often talking about something nostalgic, or something from a memory that's probably often very pleasant, or if it's less pleasant, you're going to communicate it musically, express it musically, in such a way that someone can tell this is from the perspective of a kid, a boy or girl, right? So it's going to have that telescope, or that's going to have that, it's like, you can always see, it's like, anyway, I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. There's the experience itself, and there's the person that's experiencing it, and their own age and other attributes. But if you're an adult, an older teen especially, or an adult, you're going to feel these emotions much more strongly, deeper emotions. Both, whether you're a kid or adult, it's fine either way. It's just, it is what it is. Like it's just, but there is no substitute with regard to writing music, and that's that kind of music. Look at all the different composers that have written very emotional music. Look at every single one of them, whether they're a popular composer, songwriter, or a classical composer. Bacharach went through multiple divorces. Chopin, oh man, had some deaths in the family that really shook him up a bit. Rachmaninoff went through depression. He had psychologists that were working with him. The depths of depression, how many songwriters have had affairs and divorces and these kinds of problems in life? And then, you have Franz Liszt, who, well, again, I'm not thinking the most emotional of composers, but he certainly had a great deal of emotion in his music. You know, maybe you can look at better examples than Franz Liszt, but Liszt is a composer that the more I try to understand him, it increases my understanding and my camaraderie with him. I like him more. I know he's not a perfect man. I know he had a lot of adultery, womanizing kinds of things, but I don't hate him for it. Quite the opposite. But it's I know that he tried to live a righteous life, and that is saying something that it's worth something. In my book at least. Anyway, so and then you have, but you do have some very spiritually pure composers, and you can hear that purity in the music as well. But you have like Tchaikovsky went through insane levels of grief in his life. Unimaginable stuff. Unimaginable. He tried to be married to a lady that he had feelings for on some level, sure, but the homosexual side of him was very strong. I don't know. And he was a very sensitive gentleman. And so often, talking about these very sensitive souls, including myself, that there are emotions that are so strong and poignant that they defy description how strong they are. And it's so hard to go through sometimes these experiences. Many people don't know how strong these feelings are and how hard they are to go through. But Tchaikovsky went through them. Same deal with Rachmaninoff. What about Beethoven? And so on. We think film composers are somehow not quite as emotional. Many of them are. We always see John Williams' more present side, his type A side, or his, all the business side. We don't see the side of him that's more emotional, always. But it's certainly there. Absolutely. You cannot write music like John Williams and then be emotionally dead inside. It does not work that way. There are composers that are emotionally dead inside. You will not hear them writing music that's even remotely like that stuff. Sir Edward Elgar was a very sensitive gentleman, a good Catholic man, and so sensitive, so emotional, very much so, and he loved being out in nature. Ray Vaughan Williams is a very similar kind of gentleman. These are guys. Ray Vaughan Williams never really committed to being a Christian, but he thought about it so much. I'm sure he did. So much of his music was Christian in nature, or you could tell he wanted to be, on some level, a Christian, but he couldn't quite bring himself to be that way. He's an atheist or agnostic, one of the two. I think an agnostic. John Rutter is very much the same way as Ray Vaughan Williams, but such a good man. You can see his interviews, what kind of person John Rutter is. Morton Lauridsen, same kind of deal. And then LDS composers like Michael McLean, Lex de Azevedo, Kenneth Cope. These are all godly men. These are good men. These are men that feel things very strongly and deeply. And they've suffered. And you hear their suffering. Kane Newell Daly, this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. Just the tip of the iceberg. And there are performers that maybe they don't always write their own music, like Marvin Goldstein. But when I've heard him play it, I've heard him talk, and I know he's had some deep heartaches in some level in his life. Such a good man. Such a good man. Take this from what? Just take this as I've met Marvin Goldstein in real life. I don't know if you know who he is, but I've met him. And yeah, he's feels things very, very deeply. Rob Gardner, a similar kind of deal. You know, it just, again, you have to experience the emotion before you compose the music. Unless, the only exception being, if it's coming straight from God or from the angels, right to you. And that often only happens when you've been studying music pretty seriously for a while, but not always. Not always. But Handel, before he wrote the Messiah, was a extremely good composer, extremely skilled, but he was also a very godly man, right? So it takes character a lot of times. And so what you do is you use what you've learned, but when you're writing the music, you're experiencing emotions yet again, and there's a desire that overcomes the composer. These desires to express, and it's the desire to express emotion of an infinite kind of emotions that takes over, that is the fuel for completing sometimes very lengthy works, very just mind-blowingly amazing works. The emotion is the fuel. In other kinds of music, it's not as emotional, or it's just different, it's more detached, then it becomes something more like a experiment or something intellectual or something different, which is the avant-garde, which was pushed on me in college. So on some level, I resisted it. I always knew I always knew what its purpose was. I always knew that it had some worth, but it could never compete with music that was emotional in nature. It was generally speaking, more total. It could never compete. It could never compete my own soul, most especially. And so, we can talk more about this, folks. It's going to happen. I'm going to write this music. But so many times, I've forgotten these stronger emotions that I've had in life. I haven't forgotten them, though. You can never forget these strong emotions. I've buried them deep inside. Many of them are romantic. Many emotions are different kinds of emotions, but they're still there. And they're all going to be expressed in music before I die, or as many as I can possibly create. Whether you hear them on YouTube or whether you buy them, and hopefully at some point you buy them, right? That's why I plan on living a long life. This is the kind of person I am. I'm not somebody else. I'm never gonna be somebody else. I'm never gonna be Pee Wee Herman. I'm never gonna be Michael Jackson. I'm never gonna be. I don't want to be those guys. I think they're great. Sometimes we have great admiration for those guys in so many ways. I'm never going to be Conan O'Brien. I'm never going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm never going to be, I don't know, you name them, like Mike Tyson or Bruce Lee or Vladimir Klitschko or Pele, right, soccer guy, or Abraham Lincoln. It's just many admirable people out there. I'm not gonna be them. But what's in my soul, still want to express, and it will be expressed. You know. Probably one more video tonight, but sometimes these emotions come very strongly, and these are things that are not taught in college. College is not emotional that way. It's very academic. It's very dry. It's the number one thing that's not taught, not emphasized. It is wrong, in my opinion. But, alright, catch you later. Take care. Bye.